Happy Friday, and thanks for tuning into RadioFreeRancliffe.org. In this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm. I'm thrilled to be here right now with these really quiet and retiring people, Cindy Silver and Harvey L. Silver.
Cindy L. Silver.
That's my...
Cindy Lou and Harvey Lee.
That's my photo moniker.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And the photos are amazing. And your experience as a photographer, a fine art photographer, is pretty amazing. You got a nice resume, lots of great shows and good reviews and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. You know, that's a kind of... I was always considered myself a photographer because my dad... I grew up in a photographic family. My dad managed a professional camera store down in New York City.
Uh-huh.
And there were only two there.
And where did you grow up in the city?
In Queens, in Bayside.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And Cindy, did you grow up there as well?
Queens, Jackson Heights.
At Jackson.
That's why she sounds like she does.
And then we moved to Fresh Meadows.
Oh, look at that, moving on up.
And I met him when he was 18. I was 19 at Queens College.
Oh, boy.
55 years together. Oh, boy.
50. And how did you meet, the two of you?
Am I allowed to tell?
You can tell.
Oh, I like this already.
He was taking a walk with my friend Emily Zeitlin, who lived down the block, and he thought he was going to have a date. She was meeting with him to talk about her boyfriend and her problems.
I didn't know that.
And she said, let's go up and walk with my two friends up the block.
Oh, she was trying to
so
get rid
it
of
was
me.
me and my neighbor Barbara. So he met me, and he thought I was this mysterious older woman because I had a 3-year-old. I was 19, he was 18. We took a walk around in Queens around a swamp. And I said, I want to see your photos.
Oh, no.
The old line.
His parents,
It's the old
his parents
line.
were away the next weekend, so
That was it.
I saw his photos and more, and the rest is history.
What was the more?
It sounds like that's what we were walking around. Artists are so easy that way. It's like, I'd love to see your work.
Let me show you my portfolio.
Yeah,
It's the oldest line in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And yeah, so go on.
So you thought you were going to make some time with this other woman. And she said,
Well,
no, meet some
Cindy
friends.
was very aggressive.
I was not.
She was. She started
I wasn't.
when you're
That's good.
18.
Oh, stop it.
And a woman starts boxing with you.
Oh, yeah.
Out of nowhere, you know there's something coming.
And you had a 3-year-old?
I had a 3-year-old. I'm the only person you'll ever meet in your life that someone who I knew from the time I was 12 to 16 and I loved, he was 3 years older, chose Vietnam over being a father and marrying me.
Oh, wow.
So I lived with my parents.
Well, I
and
hope he made it back from Vietnam.
He did, and then he worked for the VA in the city with the mayor's office, and I never heard from him for decades and decades. And then my son, 10 years ago, finally got in touch with me. He had no interest, but he did. So the history is just that it was us and Harvey and I, and he was his dad, and we married, and he adopted him.
That's so sweet. And you were 18, Harvey. I mean, you weren't
I was
thinking about
out of my mind.
you. Okay, that's the answer I was looking for.
Yeah, no. You know what? It was really. It's so weird because I remember when Cindy and I got together for the first time. And I remember
I like the air quotes.
Yeah,
Time.
I remember bragging to one of my friends, or at least telling one of my friends. I think it was, and she said to me, "Why?"
Yeah.
And I was saying, because why not? And it was like, anyway, we
met and we fell in love, and his parents loved Eric, and he was going to be going to film school at Harper, it was called back then, Binghamton, and he went for one semester and came back every weekend to see me, and then he came back to Queens College. So he would have been a filmmaker maybe, but he was really a photographer.
It was.
And then my son became a filmmaker, unbeknownst to us, because he was a poet, a playwright, and an artist. And he came out of NYU, a filmmaker.
This the son, the 3-year-old.
No, this is my younger son.
Okay.
Who's 16 years younger than the older one.
Oh, wow.
Because we were waiting for him to find a job he liked.
Because you wanted to stretch parenthood out as long as possible.
Because he wanted me to be a mother
like
for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's like 42 years of nonstop parenting or something.
Really?
What's kind of poetic is that when I did go off to what's now called Binghamton University, they had a new cinema program then. And the guy who was in charge of it was a very famous underground filmmaker by the name of Ken Jacobs. And the other day when my son Nathan, the film director, was up for a Gotham Best Screenwriting for Between the Temples, his film.
Nice.
And, it was a regular, and he's seated at the Sony Pictures table with Saoirse Ronan next to him, not talking to him, next to him, and having conversations with Chloe Sevigny. And so the guy he lost to, one of the many, there were 3 or 4 other people up for the award, was Jacob's son.
Azuzel.
He has a movie called...
I don't remember.
No, daughters, the 3 daughters.
Oh, our 3 daughters.
Yeah. And that's very.
Doesn't it have Demi Moore?
No.
No,
it
that's
has
not the
Elizabeth.
one.
It has Natasha Lyonne. I
Oh yeah,
believe.
right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually Nathan was hanging out with Natasha Lyonne at the Gothams too.
But he was happy that Azuzel won.
No, I was happy
they're
too.
friendly.
We actually met him before at different screenings. And so we had. I was happy that Jacobs won. It was nice.
Yeah, that's funny. The son of this
The son of my
professor.
film,
you
Yeah.
had.
my film professor.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
how long did you last up there in Binghamton?
Oh, just 6 months.
of course, me.
Blame
me. I get blamed for everything.
It really wasn't. It was that, but it was also film. I had come from the world of still photography, and the pictures you now see on exhibit that I show,
Right.
or I have in Getty, they're taken during my youth, and so. What was I going to say? Oh, God.
So you were going to say that your background was as a photographer.
Yeah,
and that
so
program was not his thing.
filmmaking at the time was really hands-on, literally cutting film. It wasn't basically on your computer. It was a very physical thing, and so
Right.
Editing,
while I
splicing.
I enjoyed using the camera. I wasn't crazy about editing and then coordinating sound and this and that. And I decided, and as it turns out, I ended up doing photography for the department for Jacobs because he liked my photography. And I took a bunch of stuff for him of different events that they held, like Herman Nisch's Blood Orgy, which you can see on, actually, they're in Getty. They're phenomenal pictures of this guy who basically came into Binghamton in the cafeteria, and on all the plastic tables were animal parts, and they crucified a dead goat and had a student lie underneath it and poured blood onto him, basically to experience so much blood you would go against killing. And as the story goes there, I remember reading in the student newspaper that Herman Nisch, who was a very famous artist, and actually Nathan is aware of him, but Nathan's aware of a lot of things like that, but Herman was walking down and it was raining, as it always did in Binghamton, and he saw a worm crossing the sidewalk, and here's the man. He didn't want to step on it. He picked the worm and put it to the side, and he was putting his humanity into action. Anyway, they ended up with my pictures were used basically by the department because they were, the New York State legislature wanted to withdraw all their financing for having it happen. And there was a big controversy up in Albany about it, and so Ken took the pictures from me, and so they could use them as evidence.
Oh God!
But then he was the photographer for the yearbook at Queens College, and took photos.
Well, that's the thing,
everyone.
I had this great idea when I took pictures at Harper too, but it was a great time because at the schools, on every Friday or Saturday night, whoever was playing the Fillmore East, like in Queens, would be playing Queens College, and they could afford them. So if the band was at Fillmore on a Friday, at Saturday they were at Queens. If
the band being Robbie Robertson, those guys.
Yes, the Birds. So
Bonnie Raitt, one of her first concerts.
Oh yeah, no, Bonnie Raitt, and so. I photographed her because she was an opening act, and I always like to photograph opening acts, hoping they become famous. And she's the only one who ever did. But she was 21.
But he also took all the photos in the yearbook, mainly often of me, when I was young and beautiful, and also all of the takeovers and the protests and the shutdowns, and so he has like the history of. But the Chambers brothers were there. I mean, he's got.
I have a lot of stuff, and so when
great
I
photos in all
was
the yearbooks.
kind of like making a career change. I had been an executive producer of big meetings and events, and up in Boston.
Now, not
No, that
then.
was then too. I mean, when I joined Getty.
Okay.
When I was getting to where my photographs
at Queens College.
what my photographs got into Getty because
You got more than you bargained for.
I love this so much.
Yeah, I hope so. Anyway, so
It's the Harvey and Silver.
wait.
Cindy
Let,
Silver.
Yeah,
let
it's
me
great.
just say,
It's great.
go anyway.
Let him ask.
Go,
He's the
ask me a question.
moderator. Don't ask him anymore. He'll just talk forever.
I know. I was just thinking. I don't know what my record is for the least amount of words in a 1 hour show, but I was thinking this could be it.
And he gets really upset because
Wind
I
you
tell him
two
to
up.
be quiet.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Harvey, that was
But
enough.
anyway,
So he got into the historical collection,
Right.
and it's all the pictures of my older son dressed as Kiss
With
for Halloween.
historical collection of Getty.
Yeah, that's
Getty
what he
images.
said.
That's what used to be called the Bettman Archive.
Right.
In fact, the guy who interviewed me had been the editor-in-chief of the Bettman Archive, and he liked my work, which was a really nice thing for that guy to like my work. And so he took all my historical stuff of anti-Vietnam, school protests, the music. I had great pictures of people like Graham Parsons and Al Cooper, and who all played. Like Van Morrison played a free lunch concert when he was in the Moondance at Queens. I mean, we had great shows there that were free shows, and Graham Parsons and the Flying Burrito Brothers were free.
I
Al
got to hang
Cooper,
out with Timothy B. Schmidt backstage, if you know him from the
Poco,
Eagles.
Poco,
Handsome.
and he went on to be in the Eagles. But anyway, yeah. So all that stuff, and when I was leaving my interview at Getty, and he said to me, and I said, "Yeah, I have great nature photography too," and he said, I can get that from anybody, but I can only get this from you." The stuff I gave him.
And sweet. And so do they still sell some of your photos?
Oh, every day. When Robbie Robinson died last summer, my photographs of Robbie Robinson, which also were in...
Was that just last summer? It seems
last
longer.
August 23.
Okay.
I was in 24 hours. I was in 200 publications and things from. I was in Rolling Stone, People, Esquire, plus the Today Show, Nightly News.
And so you get a nice little check for that?
No,
Not anymore.
when I started out doing it, I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna double my Social Security. It's not like that anymore. I think last month, for example, I was in about 8 or 9 different. I get published in they just did a thing about Bonnie Raitt, who was going into the Kennedy Center Awards. She's turning 75, so People Magazine had, and the second picture of her is one of mine. So I get into things like that. This summer, I've been in Rolling Stone. Just this summer, I was in Rolling Stone, Boston Globe, USA Today, Fortune Magazine, Esquire.
But before downloading, everyone made money. My son in the music industry, films, and photography. And now there's no money.
What changed? Why would downloading mean that you're not getting paid for
because nobody wants to pay anything. For example, in the olden golden days, like when I started doing this around, and it's not that long ago, like around 2006, I could make several $100s up to, they could charge, if you go on to Getty, it says $500 for a picture. I can get as low as 75 cents. For example, Rolling Stone has a deal with them. So like when Robinson died and they had a whole portfolio of stuff and I was one of the portfolios, I think I got, they sold it for like $25 and I get like $8 or something.
It's ridiculous. And so while he's doing all that, what were you doing, Cindy? What were you studying at Queens College?
Okay. So, I moved with him to Indiana after Queens College. I had a master's in teaching. I taught for a year in one of the worst schools in New York and had 32 self-contained 13 to 15 or 16-year-olds because many had been left back. They threw the books out the window. They fought every day. They threatened me. So thank God it was only a year. And then we all got laid off in New York, and he was going to college. So I went to Indiana University with him,
For grad
Bloomington,
school.
and I was frying donuts for $2 an hour with my master's. So he was going to get a PhD, but I wasn't going to stay around. So he looked for jobs and got a job in Fresno. And I discovered migrant students, and my passion has always been for Native Americans and Mexicans and immigrants everywhere. So I taught these kids from Mexico who had never had doctors or school, who picked garlic in the fields in Fresno, 120 degrees all day, and I got to teach them.
So we just moved from Queens to Bloomington to Fresno in
Yes.
like 12 seconds.
Yes.
Were you in Bloomington for long?
1 year.
1 year in Bloomington and 2 years I taught college out there. I was at the State University of California at Fresno for 2 years. I was the advertising teacher in the School of Journalism.
Uh-huh. And what did you study at Bloomington? You were getting
I got
a master's or a
instructional
PhD?
in something called Instructional Systems Technology, which is basically educational media. I wanted to find a way to get a job in a university, and without teaching, and so to work in a media center,
Right.
or to run a media center. So, by coincidence, the head of the journalism department in Fresno was a guy who had a degree, I think, from Syracuse in the same thing. And he knew if he was going to bring some sucker in to teach 8 courses from scratch, he needed someone with a degree in education.
But they were brilliant classes.
Yes.
And had you had experience
Yes,
teaching?
I
You knew
right
you
out
didn't
of,
want to do that?
No, I did not have experience teaching, but I had advertising. Right out of college, I worked for about a year and a half or two in retail advertising. I worked for a subdivision of Gimbals, the department store.
Nice.
And I did. I was both a copywriter and production coordinator, and that was enough for them to give me validity, even though I didn't know anything. Although it's funny, I used to study very hard, and before each class overnight, because I was teaching the whole sequence from copywriting to introduction to
And this
media
is at
buying.
Fresno State?
Uh-huh.
He did a great job.
And so my highest in student evaluations, although one student wrote can barely understand teacher because of thick Brooklyn accent,
We're from Queens.
and which was really funny.
And has it calmed down? You don't have such an accent now.
It's because I said coffee instead of coffee.
Right.
Now, he doesn't have my accent. My dad had a real Jewish inflection.
No,
His
no, it's
parents
just because kids in Fresno are don't at the time before
they were dolts.
they didn't know any better.
My son Eric's nose one day was broken by a kid who didn't know him in gym. He was a young teenager, and a kid came over and just called him dirty Jew and broke his nose.
Oh, my God.
So we didn't stay there longer because there were 6 gangs in the high school where I was teaching. I had the great kids in the library, all the migrant kids in Fresno, and I loved them. I loved their families. One of them named her kid after Nathan, but I wouldn't stay. So he got a job in New York through where his mother worked. It fell through. So he did a job search in the whole country. And we ended up in the Boston area so I moved to Indiana, Fresno, and Allington, as they say, Massachusetts, for him. And this move was here because I wanted to move to Rhinebeck.
Oh, nice. Well, so what was the gig in Boston?
In
Arlington.
Allington.
I actually got I got a job as a production manager for at the time, a 35 millimeter slide production company that did graphic slides and stuff.
Wow.
This is pre-PowerPoint, when PowerPoint was a slide or an overhead project. And actually, I will say, at Indiana, in my program, I learned how to make about 40 different ways how to make an overhead.
Right.
That was the technology then. So I got into the world of meetings and events. I went to work for another company. I spent about 5 years at this one company, then got a job with a meeting company, and I became an executive producer of meetings and events. And then that company was merged into a much larger company. And so I worked for a long time producing large-scale meetings. But being in the Boston area was great because my clients were well-known people like Gillette, Oral-B, Duracell, Reebok, Astra.
No insurance companies?
I did some work for Prudential here and there.
I did work. He did Astra Pharmaceutical, where every executive had their $1 million party when they turned 50.
I it was I did some major meetings, and I also did big sporting events for a while. That was fun. I did like
PGA.
No, I did the opening ceremonies for the WNBA. I personally, I was the executive producer and creative director of those things. I did the opening ceremonies for the NHL World Cup of Hockey. I did a game in Stockholm, and then we flew to Vancouver. And I mean, Wayne Gretzky. It was high level stuff. It was pre-Olympic. It was getting them ready for the Olympics. And then I also did. I was the executive producer, creative director for the PGA's Ryder Cup.
Oh, fun.
I
And,
knitted while
with,
Tiger Woods was playing.
Oh yeah, no,
And the ball almost hit me.
no, and and for
love
like that show, I produced everything from a Glenn Fry concert to all the opening ceremonies. We did everything, game operations, but I was in charge of all those things. And so I did a lot of high-profile stuff that was very interesting. And for Astra and Boston Scientific, I did a lot of musical stuff. I used to do a lot of Broadway-style stuff.
Oh, fun.
Where we do parodies of different shows selling pharmaceuticals for everything from asthma to rhinitis.
All right, what is rhinitis?
Allergies.
Allergies, stuffed nose.
And so when you all landed in Boston, what were you doing, Cindy?
So, with my usual luck in teaching and also having children who had incredible amounts of strep throats and ear infections.
So you landed in Boston, you had 2 kids by then.
Well, I had a child a few years after we were there. And so initially I got a job in Watertown CETA, which was a program for adults with education, ESL, and everything else, and Reagan shut that down. So I worked in ESL, English as Second Language, in different schools and companies, and I had Nathan, and I planned to teach full time, but I didn't have a family there. In Queens, I had his parents, my parents.
Right.
Every time Eric had a strep throat, which was very often, one of them would pick him up, they'd watch him. So I was on my own. And then he started traveling a lot. But Nathan had 6 strep throats from September to February in first grade. And that was when he became a brilliant artist. He was home and he started drawing like Picasso. So he never slept, and he had ear infections and strep throats. So I taught ESL, but I taught it to young children up to adults because ASI Company started sending over all their Japanese people, and I got in, and then I taught the Japanese language school principals, and every family that came, I taught them. And so all the teachers in all the schools knew I did private tutoring, and I worked for companies, and I would go into school if they needed me. And I taught at Belmont High School, where the Japanese princess went to school when her dad was an ambassador, and the woman who ran that program was best friends with them. So all the reporters would come into my classroom to take, videos of where Princess Masako, who ended up cracking when she married became the head of Japan. So I was just a person who was trying to survive on my own with no structure, having lived near aunts, uncles, cousins, and always surrounded by family.
And during all this, you were basically manufacturing the man who is now.
I was like taking Nathan was dressed in loincloths and robes, because he saw an exhibit at age 3 in a museum. He was Thundercats. He never slept, so he was on 24/7 creating.
At his 9th birthday party, he directed his first movie.
That went around the world.
Oh, well, now it became a short film called
about
Riot.
the LA riots.
But as only a 9-year-old growing up with us could make a movie about the LA riots. But literally this kid.
Well, he asked what I was doing. So I was
You were
just
making
trying to
him.
survive. It was just like Harvey traveled so much that he'd leave and come home, and after a while, Nathan and I would look up and go, "Oh, he's back. Where's
the other kid?
Oh, okay. So Eric was 16 when I had Nathan.
Okay.
And if I would go in at night, because Nathan nursed 20 times a day his first year, 20 times.
Way to go, Nathan.
If Harvey went in the middle of the night, he'd cry. If Eric, who was 16, went in, he loved Eric. Eric could sit and rock him in the same chair I rocked Eric in when he was born. Eric
Do you
moved
still
out.
have this chair?
Oh,
Yes,
I do.
we
It's
do.
my cat's chair now.
Oh,
It's Danish
geez.
modern, probably worth a lot of money.
I love that.
It's renovated.
So
Is it a rocker?
it's
One
a
of
rocker. It's not the new
glider sort of-
No, this was from 60 years ago. It's a rocking chair, Danish.
Well, you know,
vibe.
It looks like the chairs they sell now.
Yeah. So, so Eric moved out with. Eric went to high school. Promised me he never, smoke marijuana. Yada yada. He was stoned playing his drums through all of high school. He was brilliant, but was a drummer.
Wait, so a teenager didn't cop to taking drugs to his parents?
Well,
What the
our
hell?
brothers lost their minds to acid, so he
Yeah.
always promised me. So I'd meet him in the supermarket buying your food for the school band. And
Doritos and Pringles and
She was so trusting.
he was called Mary Sunshine. He was the most beautiful,
I think
wonderful
that's a kind
person.
of acid too, isn't it? Yeah.
But the other one was called the Angry Plucked Chicken when he was born. He was always whining and crabbing.
Wait, see,
So
you had two boys, Mary Sunshine and the Angry Plucked Chicken.
yeah, that's what Eric named him
Yeah.
when he came home. So Eric moved out with a group of guys who were his band, and one of them moved on to Extreme with More Than Words and made the millions, the bass player. And Eric's band got signed by Tommy Mottola the same
It
time
was
as
produced
Mariah
actually
Carey.
by Extreme.
Yeah, but he was signed when he signed Mariah Carey. Eric was discovered by Lenny Pizzi, who discovered Cyndi Lauper in Boston.
And Cheap Trick.
And we were all in heaven. And like a week later, the Japanese arm of Sony dropped the rock label. So that derailed Eric's life.
Right.
He had gone to Fitchburg for 6 weeks. Harvey got him in a
What is
terrible
Fitchburg?
college. Low-life college, but Eric wasn't
It was
interested.
a basic
So he
university
dropped
college
out and then studied recording, and then his band got places, and then it didn't. So the band imploded, and there's a saying, "Kill the drummer." So every time a band breaks up, they hate the drummer. And Eric, who was the one everyone loved, who got the record deal and everything, he was pushed out, and so Eric then went back to college in his mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was teaching philosophy classes and music like he's brilliant. So he didn't need college, but he went to get a degree. And he was with a girlfriend he met when he was 14, and they were going to get married, and they didn't. And then 30 years ago, he met his wife. I won't say anything more. So anyway, 30,
do they have kids?
Yeah, they have two children.
Wonderful children.
Yes. I have 2 grandchildren. And
So the wife somehow managed to be a part of these beautiful grandchildren.
yes, she did
That's
produce
nice.
them.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll give her credit.
Yes.
But anyway, so Eric went on. He had his own label for many, many years. and-
Electronic.
But in the last 10 years, he sort of changed. As Eric was in the music industry as it was in an incredible era of transition,
Right.
when you have a small label and they were like one of the original groups on iTunes when they would get like 79 cents out of every 99-cent sale. And they were in the original group and so because he originally right out of college got a job working for
Chris Blackwell, who discovered you too.
Oh,
and
nice.
Chris Blackwell made Eric the head of A&R for Palm Pictures.
But the problem
Right
was,
out of college.
at that point, Chris Blackwell was getting into island records
Right,
and
right.
music.
But like-
so wait, Eric would discover all these rock bands.
But like, for example...
and then he didn't
yeah.
want to sign them. So they all went on to become huge. Eric was brilliant at picking musicians.
So Eric... Also,
like Alice in Chains.
Like-
but this guy was
But
now...
Blackwell said, no, we're not doing that.
He now went into his... So Eric...
but he did
Buddy
have
Whaler.
a deal where Eric, for example, spent 6 months with Byrne.
David Byrne doing his movie.
Making
yeah.
a DVD out of Stop Making Sense.
Yeah.
That was, if you look at that CD, you'll see a DVD, you'll see Eric is listed as
And
executive
then Eric's
producer.
music was used in Succession when it...
No.
I mean...
Sopranos.
Sopranos. The opening. All his
No,
electronic
it was used,
music.
not in the opening. It was used in...
In what?
Every time they went into the strip club, bada
Oh,
bing,
God.
if you heard beats going. Well, that was very lucrative because sometimes it was Eric's music. And when you are in syndication, it's very nice. And in fact, he's still doing well off that. And so,
But then Eric was in when it all imploded, And downloading, you got 0.1%.
And Virgin went away, and all the different
and then
record
he was
stores
in
went.
Tower Records. Every record store, I made them buy Eric's records, CDs. Their sales would go up. Then he had to buy back all his CDs
It was
in
a horror
every
show.
store when Tower went under.
Oh, no.
So like $150,000 he had. So it got really dicey, and he had children, and we backed him through his whole career. So then he realized he would manage dubstep musicians, and he took these young kids in their 20s, he's now in his 50s, and they became multimillionaires who own houses, old cars.
No, he has the number one electronic artist in the world.
He has Subtronics, he has Boogie T.
He works for a big
Level
management
Up.
company out of Dave Matthews' old company, but he has a bunch of artists. His major artist is the best-selling. So he's doing incredibly well now. So he's turned his life around in a big way.
But watching him and Nathan in these two industries, and Harvey in photography, you could literally tear all your hair
But
out.
he's doing very well now. But he,
I think Norm has a question.
yeah,
I just raised my hand.
please do.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering about your sort of a creative life,
So
Cindy.
I was going to be a dancer. I wanted to. I loved Martha Graham. I studied ballet. I hated it, but I loved modern dance. And then I was a mother. And so I only took classes, and I would be up all night, and I'd be walking into bus stop things and too exhausted to go. So I always danced and took classes, but I knew I was really not talented enough, and that, like what I was as soon as I brought Eric home, was a mother. That was it, and getting an education. So ironically, I love music. I was at the Fillmore East every week. I was, we followed, Jackson Brown, Joan Baez, Bob Dylan. I was searching for him when I was 13. So my whole life was always, I knitted, I did crafts, I took dance classes. And then Nathan married a woman who's a Martha Graham technique dancer.
Oh, boy.
So that was pretty amazing. So I get to see her creating all her dances and performing.
What a treat.
It's,
and do they have children as well?
Not yet. And she's
Not yet.
actually from a Mexican-American family. And my links, I adopted a sister city in Arlington, Mass., where we protected villagers. And this is what I spent most of my life doing, helping refugees come back from the war, the civil war that our country caused in the 80s. I got involved because I thought Reagan was going to draft my son Eric at 18. He wasn't in college. So I got very active and worked endless hours every week, worked, volunteered. And we adopted a sister city with the help of John Kerry and Joe Kennedy Jr. And we got all the towns around us to pick a village. And those sister cities are still going strong 37 years later.
Love that.
And they just built we set up a sewing co-op. We sent down delegations. I didn't go because Nathan was little and the paramilitary was attacking, and I'm just hysteric. I would just be thinking, oh, my children, they won't have a mother.
Right.
But we sent down tons of people who brought thousands of dollars of medicine, bicycles, food, clothing, money. And the towns now, Arlington, it's in the curriculum. It's in the library. It's like a part of the whole town. And that's the proudest thing. And Harvey designed the logo, and it's on 1 million stationary things and drawings.
It's so funny. I designed that logo with press type.
Oh,
I mean, that's how old it is.
But
and they still use it.
But in Arlington, they sell
Press type.
thousands of things, of backpacks and material from Guatemala, which is my other passion beside El Salvador and Mexico. So Guatemala's getting money, El Salvador's getting money, and we were buying a lot of plaques and art from Mexico. So when we moved here, I joined the temple because my rabbi came to the town hall in Rhinebeck.
Okay.
And she came to town hall with Father Frank, who runs the
you
church.
joined the temple in Kingston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not in Rhinebeck, I'm not about. I went to town hall, and Rabbi Yael and Father Frank were speaking. She said immigration. He had a church that helped immigrants. I never belonged to a temple. I'm not religious. I joined, and so for 7 years, all I've done is work for immigrants, helping them. And now I fill the Blue Fridge. And I just raised $4,000, with half of it from the Rotary Club.
So nice.
To buy a new refrigerator that doesn't hit me every time I get money from people, and we go shopping every week, and we drink tons of, and we did move here, if you want to know why.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Because Nathan's film showed here from Mira
At the
Blaustein.
Woods.
This is Eric's half-brother,
Well, we call him his whole brother.
but full brother. I mean, you raised them.
Nathan Silver,
but
the director.
16 years.
Yeah,
Nathan Silver, the director.
The director.
Yeah.
That's where he.
Exit Elena played.
The
in
kid who was
Woodstock.
wearing who thought he was an American Indian, age 3.
So Nathan Silver, the
Loincloth.
director,
No
Yes.
had a show.
He had a
that
movie
that
called
was,
Exit Elena.
and it was showing up here somewhere
And
At
it
Woodstock.
showed at Woodstock. It
Okay.
had showed in Edinburgh.
in the Woodstock Film Festival.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it had showed in Edinburgh, which launched it. They loved it. It was his first film that went worldwide. Brian Cox of Succession loved it, and his wife was going to be in Nathan's next film, but she was busy after that. So he was a young guy, just graduated NYU. Both kids lived in Brooklyn. My parents were both like taking years, but dying in their 90s. So we were coming closer. So the movie played. I saw Rhinebeck. It looked like Lexington, Mass, where we lived. The only charming town, I think, is in the area, but Millbrook. And we moved here. And then he made a film.
Just like that.
Well, we were planning to move, but we didn't know where.
Well, what it was that my, I could, with the type of work I was doing at the time, still doing meeting production and whatever, it really didn't make a difference if I was up in Boston or down here, because most of my work was happening somewhere else.
But we were driving in every 2 weeks for my parents. My mom lived till almost 99, 10 years ago. So we were coming in.
Were they still in Queens?
My mother was in her house at 95, wouldn't give it up. My dad had dementia. When he gave the car keys to a lunatic who raced it into a wall, we moved them to a secure place where he fell on his head and had a grievous injury.
Egads.
So we were very busy with 2 baby grandchildren and my kids and their careers and my parents. And so Nathan, after we moved in, was doing a film. It was going to be shot in my house, but it was a film I was not going to be in. Exit Elena, I'm like one of the main characters. His 5 short films he put me in. I don't know why. But anyway, he said, Mom, you're now starring in the movie, and we'll be having 17 people move in. We had just moved. I was like losing my mind. I didn't even know where the bathrooms were.
What had happened is that he had a whole other movie set up to produce.
Are you tired yet?
And then
It fell apart.
It fell apart. But he had hired all these actors and all the crew.
The sound.
Everything was ready to go. And so they sat me down and some other
And
people.
said, "Here, we need money."
We need a bunch of money. And so they knew that I had just sold the house and I had some extra money.
So it went. So
yeah.
anyway,
Oh, boy.
so 17 people moved in for 3
So instead of doing a
weeks.
renovation, I ended
And
up
so he
buying
had me
a stake in a
star.
movie.
I was in a home for unwed mothers when I was 16, and it was my choice to decide if I would keep Eric or not. And my dad was adamant I don't sign any papers, and I make the decision. So I came home
Well, it's
to my
nice.
apartment building. My dad was a great guy. And after a few weeks, I decided, yes, I'm keeping Eric. My mother loved him. She took care of him while I was in school. So Nathan made a film to honor me called Uncertain Terms that played at Woodstock and won the Indie Award.
First Ultra Indie Award.
I was on, one second, I was on stage.
a documentary?
No.
But it had a lot of reality.
It had a great cast and all the actors, all the women who
They're
played.
now all
They're
very
all
famous.
very well-known actresses. And
But I was on stage with Darren Aronofsky, who was being honored with Natalie Portman and Jennifer Connelly behind me. And the star of Exit Elena was in all of Darren Aronofsky's college films.
That he made at
And then
Harvard.
he didn't use him in Pi,
Pi.
which ruined Jim's acting career. So I didn't say to him, which I say anything I want, you ruined his life. I said, but do you remember Jim Chiros? He goes, I remember Jim. And I said, well, he's in Nathan's other film that got honors at the Woodstock Film Festival. But Darren Aronofsky just called Nathan a few weeks ago because he loved Between the Temples and he wanted Carol Kane for his new movie. And so through
he asked Nathan for help.
So it's like a circle.
Right.
And then there's a Mira in his movie Between the Temples because Mira launched Nathan with, his Exit Elena and Uncertain Terms and everything.
Uh-huh.
But what's really interesting?
And Adam of Film Wax used to do a lot of broadcasts about us, and then he kind of disappeared. But we know him very well.
Right.
But what I was going to say is that, what's interesting is that we made this film called Uncertain Terms that is about a home for unwed mothers. And the home that Cindy in real life went to, remember there was a documentary about triplets who...
Yes.
Right, and I forget the name of it, but it was about triplets who the adoption
experiments
agency had basically made three different
it was
placed
Louise
the kids separately.
Wise.
It was the same home,
But not
that
the
Cindy
one.
was in.
But that one was
the
in
same
New York.
company,
This
the
one
same
was in Staten
organization.
Island.
It was the same organization that Cindy was in.
Yeah,
it was
and
very
they wanted
freaky.
Eric. He was handsomer than John Bon Jovi.
They wanted to take. They wanted to take him away.
And they wanted this gorgeous Jewish baby to sell him with Louise Wise. And the woman, the social worker, told my mother, if you want a child, you should have one. My mother was like 50-something. And my dad just kept saying, don't sign any papers.
Smart.
Yeah. So I gave birth alone, tied down, gassed, cut, iodined, Enamid at 16. Yeah.
Egads.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was quite an experience.
Alone in the delivery room
Yes.
with medical professionals.
Tied down. And,
But no family. Why tied down?
They used to tie your arms in legs down. I don't know why.
Right.
So when I had Nathan, it was in a birthing room at Mount Auburn Hospital with this great hippie doctor who reminded us of his hippie brother. We didn't know he was on speed and was going to be sent out of the country. But we loved him. And he said, you'll have your child by 6:30. And he said, I have fish in the freezer. I want to get home.
That's Nathan.
So
that's
I had
Eric
Nathan at
Cindy.
6:23 on
That's Eric,
5:23.
the musician.
And I brought him home on my birthday. And I've never rested one moment in 41 years since I had him.
Yeah. But you
That's
seem
her.
very happy about all that.
I love him. I adore him. He's a lot of work.
Yeah.
He's a lot of work. Eric was a lot of work.
But you seem so happy
Why at
with
18 I was
all this
interested.
work that
Well,
is
I love
required
what
of you.
That come hither, look.
Yes, I love that I've promoted them and that it's led to
Right.
Darren Aronofsky, that Carol Kane loves him, that Robert Smigel loves him, that Jason Schwartzman loves him, that Jesse Eisenberg thinks he's a genius and his film's much better than his. It's been a long haul, 15 films.
That's a lot of films.
That's
Does
a
he
lot.
do like a
Right.
film a
Go-
year?
Yeah, he did till the pandemic. He has like 5 projects
That's
that
Eric.
didn't happen because he was going to be making an $8 million film with Toni Collette, and then,
Don't
so,
go to deep.
yeah. So anyway,
It's
it's been a long haul, but he's gets phone calls from Isabelle Hubert. He gets phone calls from.
It's a tough, fickle business.
Yes, we know.
Yeah.
So is the music industry.
But he seems to be doing pretty well. I mean,
Oh,
this,
he's
this movie.
doing really well. Now, you know what? What it is there's a lag between, that's her, yes.
Yeah.
Her and Bob Dylan.
Look at a picture of
Oh,
Cindy.
yeah.
Amazing.
He'll do real well. I mean,
Yeah.
what it is right now, he's at a funny phase where Between the Temples is still basically it's now it's in the award, get in the award season.
They're hoping that
and
Carol
they're
will get
hoping for different
recognition.
things, but and he has a lot of other projects that will come to fruition in the next year. And at that point, his life should change, hopefully, really nicely. And he has a lot of things coming
I should
up.
point out that every art show Harvey's done, every gallery with his photos, guess who's promoted it and brought 70 to 90 people to each of them? Me.
Okay. All right. Let me. All right.
Well, they want to know what I've done. That's what my life
All right,
has been.
Cindy, if you just let me make a comment.
Sure.
Cindy basically has gotten a lot of recognition for what she's done in Nathan's films, and Nathan he, when he made his early films, he does. I never quite understood where his ideas for his different films came, because some pretty strange films in a way, the scripts. But he always liked to go with familiar faces and things. And so Cindy appears in a bunch of his films. Some of our other friends appear. He's very consistent. And it's only in recent years that now he's with professional actors. When he started, for example, when he did this film back in 2010 called Exit Elena, the one that brought us here at the Woodstock Film Festival, Exit Elena was shot up in Lexington, Mass. And he had a whole script written, but as he was directing his mother, he realized she couldn't follow a script. Oh, nor could she follow direction. So as a result,
he became famous for being scriptless.
It gave birth to what he became famous for, his improvisational style, which is because Cindy couldn't remember a line.
Well, try having everyone in your film living in the house, people who were like...
All right, Cindy,
well,
come
I'm
on.
saying we had insane things going on. And I was in the movie...
Tell us about the sax.
This guy...
come on, Cindy. No, come on.
But it's true.
But it might be
Which
true.
guy?
There was a thing where a
names,
guy
yeah.
had to stay away from someone in the film that he was harassing. So I was serving 5 meals a day, putting everyone up, and I was in the movie full time. I'm not an actress.
Well, you are, evidently.
If you also watch Cutting Your Mother, which is a documentary.
Cutting My Mother.
You'll see her in her full glory. It's a documentary, the only documentary I ever really did.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. It was on Topic, which was a streaming service that's no longer.
So that's Cutting My Mother by Nathan Silver on YouTube.
On YouTube, yes.
And I was devastated.
And so then he made this film to make up for it.
He made that.
And
then this movie now is based on that. And Carol Kane and Carolyn Aarons watched it, and they loved it. And Carol Kane on every stage would say, and Nathan's courageous mother inspired me. Because I was taking a B'nai Mitzvah class because my friend lost her boyfriend to a very tragic death on the bridge. And so the rabbi said, you all need to gather around her and you'll all get a bat mitzvah. Well, we all dropped out.
Wait, so you were older taking the B'nai Mitzvah class?
A few years ago.
And so did you do it?
No, we dropped out.
Oh.
Only one young woman. But Carol Kane in the movie gets a bat mitzvah.
She does.
So she watched it, and they had a Jewish advisor and everything.
So so he made this Cutting My Mother.
Yes.
A documentary.
Yes.
You're in it a bunch, I'm guessing.
Yes, and then I direct a scene.
Prior to that, you were acting in some of his movies.
Well, I was in his movies, but I was just me. I was just
But if you couldn't remember the lines, then you had lines. If you had lines, then you're acting.
What it was is that she improvised, and she was brilliant at it. In fact, when she goes back into, like, when I've gone with her to sound studios to do, when we, they basically have to get lines again, when they're, after a movie, they re-record
ADRs.
ADR. And we'll go into the studio, and I have little roles here and there, and I'll be like going through. I mean, yeah. And so I'll be in with the sound and Nathan, and they'll say, "All right, here, do the lines." And we'll do like 20 takes. Finally, they'll reach a point where Nathan will say to me, "We'll work it out."
Cindy, we'll cut you.
And Cindy, when I've observed her in these ADR sessions, she's like. One take Cindy. She's brilliant.
I don't have, because I'm not an actress, I don't have any ego involved with it. I just be me. And from doing 40 years of ESL, where as a Jew I used my hands and no one spoke English and I didn't speak their language.
If you see Exit Elena, Uncertain Terms, she's really, really good in those films. And look, when we went out to L.A. with Uncertain Terms, the L.A. Film Festival, it's so funny. A guy stood up and said, "She should get an Academy Award." And it's hysterical, because she's not, and she'll be the first one to say at Q&As, "I am not an actress. I am Nathan's mother." In fact, you'll see that in Cutting My Mother when they were at some Q&A that they filmed, and she says those exact words. But she never really has any illusions about it.
It's just my pride for Nathan.
Right. Well, that's so sweet, and how nice to be a part of his art. And was his brother ever in any of the movies?
No, just one tiny second. Eric is not a film person, and Eric's wife doesn't like films. And
Oh, Eric's wife.
No, it's sort of like Eric has his own life, and didn't live up in Lexington
my
or in Rhinebeck
grandchildren
when these
are
films
in
were
1
being
second
made.
of a film
Yeah.
because they were away when Between the Temples was shot. So my friend Leslie Kidder's daughter Mia is in it. She's great. Our best friend Diane Lanier, who's backed all of Nathan's films since she saw him and proclaimed him a genius. She's helped him. She's the rabbi's wife in the movie. Hi, Diane. We love you. And my friend Nancy and Michael, Nechama Zipporah and Moshe Kessler in Soft in the Head, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Where they're religious Jews with a son, Carl, Diane's nephew. They were in the film. They were great.
Oh, he's
so
used-
he uses all of our names. Like there's Carla Kessler. My best friend is Nancy Kessler, Michael Kessler. Our best friends met through us. So everything's a family. So all of his film crews, they love me more than my children. So I'm always happy to be with all his actresses and actors
yeah.
and sound people, and they're so wonderful. And it's a family, like Jason Schwartzman, whose mother's Talia Shire, said on Office Hours.
Well, yeah, the only other type podcast similar to this that we were on was she was on Tim Heidecker's Office Hours.
So he
And,
said,
with Nathan
so
and
Jason
Jason
Schwartzman
Schwartzman.
was on it. He said, I didn't realize when we were making the movie that his mother would be there every day. And then I realized it's a family. She comes with baked goods every day.
Right.
She talks with everyone. They love her.
And Dalla de Leon said to Cindy what she. What
She wrote to me. We
Yeah.
were writing to each other. The star in it, a Filipino actress who's brilliant. She said, I usually hate people's mothers, but I love you.
Dalla de Leon was
That's a pretty good line.
Yeah, she was in Triangle of Sadness.
And now she's in Ghostlight.
Yeah, and she's wonderful.
In Ghostlight
she's in
now.
Ghostlight. She's a wonderful person, really nice person, and but what it is now, I think Between the Temples, which is really Nathan's. I mean, in the world of independent film, he's incredibly well known, and this is his first breakout.
Right.
with a major cast. Now
And people really liked it.
yes, and not look
Just plain nuts.
in Thirst Street, which is a film he did in Paris, and was here in English here, released in the United States, and but the opening narration is Angelica Houston. So he's worked with people of renown before,
Right.
But the first time the entire cast is really. In this film, you have Jason Schwartzman, you have Carol Kane, you have Robert Smigel, you have Carolyn Aarons, you have Dolly de Leon. It's a very strong Matthew Shear, who's in all of Noah Baumbach movies.
The cast was great.
Yeah,
The writing was
Isn't it
amazing.
great?
Yeah.
I meant to point out, I
And-
thought I was in my sunglasses. I had a burst eye blood vessel. I didn't get punched.
No,
I thought that was the sequel to Cutting My Mother.
beating your mother,
Slugging
your mother.
And by the way, he had me direct a scene in it, in one of the 4
in
parts.
Cutting My Mother.
In Cutting My Mother. And Nicole, at that point, was his new girlfriend, and she's the dancer. And I direct her doing a dance that she created for me.
Why did he ask you to do that instead of doing it himself?
Oh, he wanted me to.
Oh.
If you watch Cutting My Mother, you'll find out.
Okay.
It was incredulous. I couldn't believe
it's
he wanted
basically
me
he
to.
approaches Cindy in the movie, and
Don't tell, let him
No,
watch.
but this was a surprise.
We're going to watch it. We're going to go home and watch
Yeah,
it
and
tonight.
Nicole is gorgeous. She's a model, an actress, a Pilates teacher, ballerina. She's exquisite, just fabulous artist.
Yeah.
And so they both get each other.
So how did you enjoy directing?
Well, you know what? Ironically, I loved it, and I plan to direct the next part of Cutting My Mother, but I won't tell you what it's going to be.
The next part, the sequel.
The sequel.
To Cutting
Cutting My Mother again.
The sad sequel. The sad sequel that's
Cutting My Mother
It's
redo.
going to be called
Like Apocalypse redo.
It's going to be called Not a Happy Ending. And I'll
Oh.
leave it like that.
Oh boy, we can hardly wait. Well, so it captured your imagination, the directing, and you're
you know
thinking
what?
about.
It was like I had no idea when I was doing it and doing the dance and her friends dancing that I should have been looking at the camera, seeing what it was seeing. I was looking at them, And then Nathan's friend, who was helping me, explained, you won't see the whole body because what you're seeing is what's there. And I was like, oh,
this.
but I want the whole scene. But we didn't do it that way because the camera can only catch so much.
Right.
But it's gorgeous. And so it was an opportunity for Nicole to act and me to act and direct for Nathan. And it does expose my life where I'm a wandering Jew who has been lost everywhere we've moved because I left my family and my relatives, and I was always a person who loved to be with my family, even though they were crazy.
But it seems you've stopped wandering here in Rhinebeck.
We're here.
You're here, making no promises. But have you sort of found a place to...
Yeah, I mean, I found a place in the sense that with the temple, I've done a million things.
Is the temple in Kingston on
Yes,
Albany Ave?
and with the Blue Fridge, I'm like a part of that group. And with the Rotary Club, I just fundraised for a new refrigerator, and we've collected hundreds of blankets through Betsy Giacorusso and bicycles. And so my place in the world, but my son Nathan is always traveling. Eric, for years now, has been so incredibly busy that we have not had a discussion in years. Because when he comes, he's on the phone with everything going on with all his artists all over the country.
Right.
So for me, home would be where my family is.
Right.
And, you know.
Let me just point this out, that if you go to see Cutting My Mother, one of the really nice things in life is that Richard Brody of The New Yorker really appreciates Nathan and has written about him extensively. So is the author Jonathan Lethem. He's written about Nathan extensively. But this is the review in The New Yorker. I'm showing this to... and that's, just look at the headline.
Cutting My Mother Reviewed, a filmmaker's ingenious web series made in collaboration with his mom. Oh, and there she is.
And that's my photo. So we had a collaboration there.
Oh, I love that. A picture of your kid and your wife.
Yeah, and that's in The New Yorker. But it was
what
very
fun.
It was very nice. And but again, and Brody, keeping true form, because he really appreciates Nathan's work, put him in the top 10 on 2024 movies. They made Cutting Between the Temples #7 on their top 10.
That's great.
And so, yeah, I mean...
Look at you. Mom is just beaming with pride. It's so sweet.
Mom is exhausted.
But, and so, because Brody as a critic gets him, which is nice,
Yeah,
and
right.
if
And
you-
Lethem,
And Jonathan Lethem did a wonderful interview with him in Filmmaker magazine this summer, and also a DVD set that came out. He did liner. He wrote an essay about Nathan. He's a big fan of Nathan's.
No, it's just really wonderful. Like, we went to Sundance, and the head of the whole festival, when I met him, he said, Nathan's movie's my favorite at the whole thing. He was rejected from Sundance 15 times. So if he had gotten into Sundance sooner, he probably would have been bigger sooner. But I think this was the movie that
It was
was
meant
going
to
to be
be,
the one to break him into a bigger market.
Right.
It takes movies, unfortunately, movies with recognizable people for the most part. There are exceptions of movies that make it.
Yeah.
But you need, unfortunately, they get overlooked for the people. You just look at the nominations of awards. People get overlooked for, and you'll see the same famous people being nominated over and over again.
Right. And that's the way it goes. And
And
that's,
part of what's great of being here is meeting people like you.
Oh, well, thank you.
And the
it's
two of you.
So nice.
And Betsy and all the artists Tom Kail, all the brilliant artists in town.
It's a great town for creative professionals.
Yeah.
And thank you to creative professionals for being here tonight. We're out of time. What's your website, Harvey?
HarveySilver.com.
HarveySilver.com to see your photos.
Silver spelled like the metal, not with an A.
Thank you both so much for being here.
Well,
Everybody,
thanks
for
putting
tuning
up
in.
with us.
Have a great Friday and
Thank
a
you so
fabulous
much.
weekend. Thanks, Jen and Matt and the Epicurean, for hosting this.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you
is
so much.
great.
Good night.